Spill the tea for me. What do you say to that?
Tonight, the candidates for Spokane's biggest job sit down to spill the tea.
So let's dive into it. You're running for re-election.
Mayor Nadine Woodward is seeking re-election and going head-to-head with challenger Lisa Brown.
What are your plans now to focus on increasing public safety in Spokane?
The concentration is on staffing the department to the size that we need to staff.
Law enforcement has to be funded, accountable, get the kind of training that they need.
Hear their plans to keep Spokane safe and lessons learned when it comes to homelessness.
Getting the actual housing to move them to was part of the challenge.
They have assured us that there's not going to be another Camp Hope on WashDOT property.
Plus, a historic race. For the first time, Spokane will elect a woman for Spokane City Council president.
It would mean so lot. Look how far women have come in Spokane.
But I do realize that representation matters. Spokane is on the forefront of lots of opportunities.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down and spilling the tea with me on who you are and your campaign. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for our hour-long special of The Tea with me, Amanda Roley. In our commitment to bringing you more to every story, we want to help you really get to know your Spokane City candidates before the general election on November 7th. That's why I met with Spokane mayoral and council president candidates and asked them to spill the tea on who they are. Tonight, we'll share my interviews with each of them, including extended responses you haven't heard before. Now, we'll begin with the highlights from my interviews with Spokane's mayoral candidates. Incumbent Nadine Woodward is seeking a second term as Spokane's mayor, and Washington's former director of the Department of Commerce, Lisa Brown, is hoping to secure her first term. I met with both candidates in August, ahead of the primary election. We discussed who they are and where they stand on the most pressing issues at that time. Nadine Woodward, thank you for joining me here on The Tea with Amanda Roley
to be here.
to talk about your campaign. Happy to have you here.
Thank you. This is awesome. And loving the tea.
Well, I have to ask you, it's my first tough question to start us out here. What did you decide to drink today?
Well, I got the butterfly lemonade, which is actually made from their blue tea, and it's purple, which I think
Isn't that
is
pretty?
quite fitting for the Lilac City.
Well, so let's dive into it. You're running for re-election. You're near the end of your first term as mayor. So looking forward, what are your plans now to focus on increasing public safety in Spokane?
The concentration is on staffing the department to the size that we need to staff. What does that look like? Where are we going to get the funding for that?
So some people in the community are not happy with Spokane Police Chief Craig Meidel. Do you think the chief was justified in giving those downtown business owners the level of access and data and information that he did?
I want our police chief to be engaged in all communities. When the downtown community came and they said, you know, we have issues downtown. We want to work with the city and with the police department to come up with solutions. And that's what he did.
So you think he was justified?
Absolutely. That's why I didn't have HR perform an investigation of that.
How do you explain not initiating an investigation to constituents who are simply asking for transparency or are concerned that may show a lack of transparency?
These, Amanda, are anti-police advocates, and that's not what they want.
So your opponent, Lisa Brown, she's criticized you about the last 3 years in office, saying your administration has stalled the progress of the city. She points to excessive turnovers and too much conflict among staff. Spill the tea. What do you say to that?
Wow. Well, you know, this is a tough time to be a leader of an organization that's 2,000 plus employees. When I came into office, half of the cabinet was either an interim or vacant. I mean, we have the same amount of turnover of any corporation.
What would you say is your biggest accomplishment?
I tell you, one of the things, there's several things, but the one that I'm really excited about, that I'm excited to work on in the next term, is this regional homeless authority.
Well, I can't talk about homelessness without bringing up Camp Hope. What is your take on how that was handled from the formation of the homeless encampment near I-90 to its closure?
This started out as a protest, but it got out of hand. And so we said, we have a facility with all the wraparound services.
What are the lessons learned?
Doing the right thing doesn't always get you the result you want, but you still have to do the right thing. We did the right thing in engaging the state in this. They have assured us that there's not going to be another Camp Hope on WashDOT property. We're going to hold them to their word.
Well, thank you so much, Nadine, for
thank
talking
you.
through all
Thank
this
you.
with me.
Yeah.
Good luck to you
Thank
on
you.
your re-election campaign.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the time. And thanks for the tea.
Lisa Brown, running for mayor here. Thank you so much for joining me on The Tea with Amanda Roley. It's so nice to have you here today.
Thanks, Amanda. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, we'll start out. I'd like to find out what kind of tea you decided to drink today.
I went with the Japanese matcha on ice.
First of all, tell me, why did you decide to run for Spokane mayor?
Well, I was the director of commerce, and I saw our city just not moving forward in some key areas. And I thought this is the time when I could bring my experience from the legislature and from WSU, Spokane, to the city I love.
Your opponent has criticized you as a career politician with no actual plan to improve safety or crime in Spokane. Spill the tea for me. What do you say to that?
Well, it's wrong, it's false. When I declared for mayor in March, I immediately went on a listening tour and I published a public safety agenda that right now is a blueprint that I can enact as soon as I'm elected.
What is your plan, Lisa, to increase public safety?
One aspect is clearly law enforcement, and law enforcement has to be funded, accountable, get the kind of training that they need. Another pillar of public safety has to be a plan to address homelessness.
What would you say were some lessons learned out of the formation and closure of Camp Hope?
Getting the actual housing to move them to was part of the challenge.
But I think the biggest criticism is just how long the camp stuck around.
The negative impacts for the neighborhood were really unfortunate. It was really unfortunate that the city's response to the state effort was to sue and litigate rather than sit down at the table and cooperate.
Do you think Camp Hope would have closed by June 9th had this lawsuit not been introduced?
Oh, absolutely. There was already a plan in place.
Do you think Chief Meidel was justified in giving downtown business owners the level of access and information that he did?
I think the buck stops not with the chief, but with the mayor. The chief reports to the mayor.
You've criticized Woodward's administration, saying it's stalled the city's progress and pointing to excessive turnover and too much conflict. So how will your administration be different?
There may need to be some changes, but I will make that decision quickly, and then with the team, we'll set some priorities. I'll set a big table for a transition committee.
What would you do as mayor to address the growing pains we're feeling because of this population growth in our community?
We definitely need more housing. One of the things we have to pay attention to, however, is we need the infrastructure that supports a good neighborhood. And I'd like to see more housing, particularly what they call middle housing, which really works for young families starting out.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for sitting down and spilling the tea with me on who you are and your campaign as mayor.
Thanks, Amanda.
Now that's just a look at just the highlights from my roughly 45-minute interview with Spokane's mayoral candidates. In our next half hour, we'll share how they responded to other questions that you haven't heard before. Now, Spokane's race for city council president is a historical one. That's because voters will elect their first woman to the seat.
You know, I gotta tell you, I never really thought about that when I put my name in to step up, but I do realize that representation matters.
Betsy Wilkerson is hoping to make that historical mark in Spokane. After the break, we will spill the tea on her plans as council president. Welcome back to our Creme 2 special of The Tea with me, Amanda Roley. Two Spokane women are hoping to make a historical mark in the upcoming general election. On November 7th, voters will elect their first woman as Spokane City Council president. Let's begin with my interview over tea with Betsy Wilkerson. Betsy Wilkerson, thank you for joining me on The Tea with Amanda Roley to spill the tea on who you are. We're happy to have you here.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and I like spilling the tea, so I look forward to our conversation.
Well, great. Yeah. Well, so first I have to ask you, what tea did you decide to sip on with me today?
I got a white tea. It's different and very tasty.
Now, Betsy, this is a historic race for Spokane. We have two women running for Spokane City Council president. So whoever wins, we will have Spokane's first woman elected to Spokane City Council president. And for you, second Black woman as council president. What would that mean to you?
You know, I gotta tell you, I never really thought about that when I put my name in to step up, but I do realize that representation matters. Spokane is on the forefront of lots of opportunities.
Proposition 1 is on the general election ballot this year. So why don't you support Proposition 1?
If you look at a map of Proposition 1, that covers about 95%. If you can't camp here, where can you camp? That's the question.
What do you say to maybe folks who live by these schools or daycares and believe the intent behind the proposition is to increase safety?
The intent is to increase safety, but Amanda, currently we don't have enough officers now to enforce a lot of the things that are on the books.
What is your vision for the future of track?
I like to see the track decommissioned as well.
Really?
There is
that could ruffle some feathers.
That could ruffle some feathers, I know.
So where would they go? I mean, that's 300 people.
And Amanda, that is the question. I have always been a fan of the scatter site model, which is smaller facilities that neighborhoods can absorb, 50 to 70 people.
I did see you had a recent campaign email that went out saying that Spokane voters have two choices. Elect an experienced leader who will be ready to start the job at day one, or, and it appears to be a subtle reference to your opponent, let outside special interests buy this race and push the city backwards. What do you mean by that?
Amanda, there has been so much outside money that has come into this race, or these races. It's almost sinful.
The current Public Disclosure Commission numbers actually shows that you've received more contributions from out of Spokane and out of state than Kim Please by $10,000. What do you say to that?
So I had a great group of supporters, women who supported me out of the Seattle area. And they were investing in me as a woman and as a leader. And for that, I'm proud of that. If you look at the number of individual voters,
that's 85% of your contributions.
85% of my contributions have come from individual voters.
The City Council recently denounced Mayor Nadine Woodward for appearing at a prayer event with former state legislator Matt Shea. What do you say to the statements that Mayor Woodward has released, saying she was either unaware of Matt Shea's involvement and regrets being up on stage with him?
It would have been great if she had just came to council before all the pressure, and we could have came out together and said, this is not Spokane.
Well, thank you so much, Betsy, for sitting down with me and spilling the tea on who you are.
Thank you.
That's only a snippet of my conversation with Wilkerson. We'll hear extended responses from her on additional topics later on. But after the break, we'll help you get to know her opponent, Kim Please.
Our city council president can do a better job at supporting our police department who keep us safe.
Kim Please is running for Spokane City Council president. Last year, Chris Jordan defeated her in the race for Spokane County Commissioner. But now Please is hoping to make a difference at the city level. To help you get to know her better, I asked Please to spill the tea on who she is and what her plans are as council president.
Well,
Kim, please, thank you for joining me once again here on The Tea with Amanda Roley. Happy to have you back.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, well, we always start out, gotta know what type of tea you decided to drink with me today.
Well, it's my favorite, and I have it at home. It's the cinnamon spice tea on ice.
This is a historical race for Spokane, the
Yes.
council president. So, Kim, you could be the first woman elected to Spokane City Council president. Whoa. So what would that mean to you?
It would mean a lot. Look how far women have come in Spokane.
On your campaign website, you mentioned that you believe City Council hasn't been taking public safety seriously. What do you mean by that?
Our city council president can do a better job at supporting our police department who keep us safe.
Well, for the general election, Proposition 1 is on the ballot. It's that citizens' initiative to ban encampments within 1,000 feet of public schools, parks, daycares. Why do you support it?
Well, one of the first things I've done is gone to some of the neighborhoods. Like I went out to the West Central neighborhood and talked to all those people about the parks. My biggest worry is around schools and imagine the having a child, walking through the park and finding, drugs.
Well, now spill the tea for me, Kim. The Trent or Track Center has also been kind of a hot button issue within our community. So what is your vision for the future of Track?
Well, I know right now it's not sustainable. It really is not, the amount of money that we're spending on the Trent shelter. But, we have to have it. Cold weather is coming in and we need it. But there's a lot of people that have really criticized it because it's not homey enough. It's more of a warehouse.
The City Council recently denounced Mayor Nadine Woodward for appearing at a prayer event with former state legislator Matt Shea. Censuring and denouncing really are just they're just a formal disapproval, right?
Absolutely.
So in your position, if you find, hey, I do need to hold somebody accountable, is that enough?
If something comes up that, again, I would probably just set a meeting with whoever that person is or who's responsible and saying, this is wrong and do it a lot differently.
Betsy Wilkerson recently sent out a campaign email saying Spokane voters have two choices: elect an experienced leader who will be ready to start the job day one, or, and it appears to reference you in a subtle way, let outside special interests buy this race and push the city backwards. So I want to hear, what is your reply to that implication that your campaign has been bought by outside special interests?
Well, I would say 99.9% of all my supporters are all from people from Spokane.
So I looked at the numbers. So the Public Disclosure Commission, it actually turns out the current PDC number shows Betsy actually has more contributions from out of state, out of Spokane than you by $10,000. So what do you hope voters take away from that? I mean, the numbers don't lie, right?
Right, yeah, numbers don't lie. And I hope that people realize, look at the numbers, check the facts out and things like that.
Well, thank you so much, Kim,
thank
for
you.
joining me on The Tea and spilling the tea with me.
Thank you so much.
Well, that was only a small portion of my conversation with Kim Please. You can find the full interview with her and opponent Betsy Wilkerson on the KREM 2 YouTube page, or text us the word T to 509-448-2000 and we'll send the link straight to your phone. Welcome back to The Tea with me, Amanda Roley. In each of my interviews with Spokane's mayoral candidates, we spent roughly 45 minutes discussing the most important issues in the community. So now we'll share their extended responses to those topics, along with additional questions you haven't heard the answers to yet. Lisa Brown, running for mayor here. Thank you so much for joining me on The Tea with Amanda Roley. It's so nice to have you here today.
Thanks, Amanda. Glad to be here.
First of all, tell me, why did you decide to run for Spokane mayor?
Well, I was the director of commerce, and I saw our city just not moving forward in some key areas. And I thought this is the time when I could bring my experience from the legislature and from WSU, Spokane, to the city I love.
Your opponent has criticized you as a career politician with no actual plan to improve safety or crime in Spokane. Spill the tea for me. What do you say to that?
Well, it's wrong. It's false. When I declared for mayor in March, I immediately went on a listening tour, and I published a public safety agenda that right now is a blueprint that I can enact as soon as I'm elected. So I would encourage people, go to my website, look at my public safety agenda. It's very comprehensive. I don't see anyone that's criticized it.
What is your plan, Lisa, to increase public safety?
One aspect is clearly law enforcement, and law enforcement has to be funded, accountable, get the kind of training that they need. Another pillar of public safety has to be a plan to address homelessness. Without that plan, we are simply moving visibly homeless people from under a bridge to the emergency room, or to jail, or to a shelter, and then the process starts all over again.
We are seeing an uptick in our community of drive-by shootings and just violent crimes in general. So how would you address that?
Thank you for mentioning that. Unfortunately, one of the areas where we're experiencing an increase is in domestic violence. If you look at the people who are the victims of a violent crime in our city and read the stories, a lot of times you'll see that it was a family member or an family member that was responsible for that type of violence. So we definitely have to work on that. Another thing I saw at Commerce is some really interesting work with youth to divert them from bad behaviors. So for example, in Central Washington, there are some good programs that work with youth in particular. Again, a Commerce program that funded some of those. I'd love to see our police department maybe talk with Yakima about their experiences with this program, and maybe they want to adopt the same program.
What would you say were some lessons learned out of the formation and closure of Camp Hope?
Getting the actual housing to move them to was part of the challenge. Part of the lessons learned is that housing is important, but it's not just about housing. We also needed the treatment facilities, the detox facility that was created, the behavioral health referrals, so people that have either addiction or severe mental health issues could get those services.
But I think the biggest criticism is just how long the camp stuck around.
The negative impacts for the neighborhood were really unfortunate. It was really unfortunate that the city's response to the state effort was to sue and litigate rather than sit down at the table and cooperate.
Do you think Camp Hope would have closed by June 9th had this lawsuit not been introduced?
Oh, absolutely. There was already a plan in place.
You've criticized Woodward's administration, saying it's stalled the city's progress and pointing to excessive turnover and too much conflict. So how will your administration be different?
There may need to be some changes, but I will make that decision quickly, and then with the team, we'll set some priorities. I'll set a big table for a transition committee, and I'll invite a lot of people with different perspectives, from downtown businesses to neighborhood businesses, to people with diverse points of view to that table.
So so you're saying there needs to be a personnel leadership change? Is that what you're
There
implying?
may need to be some changes within the leadership team at City Hall, but I'm not going to make that decision until I have a chance to meet with them and evaluate.
What would you do as mayor to address the growing pains we're feeling because of this population growth in our community?
We definitely need more housing. One of the things we have to pay attention to, however, is we need the infrastructure that supports a good neighborhood. So as I've been in Latah Valley, it's distressing to see that hundreds of houses are being built, but there's no fire station. There's no plan for a school or a park. And so we've got to do, as a city, that appropriate planning and investment in the infrastructure so that neighborhood can have the same quality of life as other neighborhoods. And I'd like to see more housing, particularly what they call middle housing, which really works for young families starting out.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. Nadine Woodward, thank you for joining me here on The Tea with Amanda Roley
to be here.
to talk about your campaign. Happy to have you here.
Thank you. This is awesome.
Well, so let's dive into it. You're running for re-election. You're near the end of your first term as mayor. So looking forward, what are your plans now to focus on increasing public safety in Spokane?
The concentration is on staffing the department to the size that we need to staff. What does that look like? Where are we going to get the funding for that? So that's the huge next step in our public safety approach.
Kind of dial it down for me. So looking at staffing and then a couple other things.
Well, we'll see how the high utilizer initiative goes. We just passed the ban on open drug use in public spaces. We revised our illegal camping and sit and lie ordinances. So all of those, we need to give those time. But you know what? Maybe there's some new ordinances with a council that is more aligned with me that we could get passed so that we could address some of the challenges that we're still facing.
So your opponent, Lisa Brown, she's criticized you about the last 3 years in office, saying your administration has stalled the progress of the city. She points to excessive turnovers and too much conflict among staff. Spill the tea. What do you say to that?
Wow. Well, you know, this is a tough time to be a leader of an organization that's 2,000 plus employees. When I came into office, half of the cabinet was either an interim or vacant. I mean, we have the same amount of turnover of any corporation. Workforce shortages have prevented us from hiring as quickly as we've wanted to. We have some employees that are in interim positions longer than I think I would like or council would like, but that's where we are today.
What would you say is your biggest accomplishment?
The one that I'm really excited about, that I'm excited to work on in the next term, is this regional homeless authority. The discussion of bringing all of the resources that we have in our region, the services and the funding to address one of our biggest challenges, and that's homelessness. And I said this back in 2019, I believed it even before I ran for office, that this homelessness is not a city of Spokane issue, it is a regional issue. However, the city of Spokane is the one addressing the majority of this issue, and we cannot do it anymore.
Well, I can't talk about homelessness without bringing up Camp Hope. What are the lessons learned?
Doing the right thing doesn't always get you the result you want, but you still have to do the right thing. We did the right thing in engaging the state in this. They have assured us that there's not going to be another Camp Hope on WashDOT property. We're going to hold them to their word.
How do you do that? That's a big question on everyone's mind. How do we prevent another large encampment like this from forming?
Well, we've created, in my first term, 500 more low barrier spaces in shelters. I don't think we should be building more low barrier space. I think we need the transitional. We need to get people connected to services. We need, I would say, tougher guardrails to get them into services. And then we need to have the permanent housing to eventually get them there.
As mayor, how would you hope to address the expected influx of population, as well as address the growing pains that we're feeling now?
In just the city of Spokane, we need 25,000 more housing units to get to where we need. But what we were able to do a whole year before the state did it, this last legislative session, was pass pretty progressive zoning ordinance, which allows now on a single family zoned lot the ability to build a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex. So allowing more flexibility and more density in some places.
When you had just been elected mayor, we sat down for an interview, and I'm going to read back a quote that you had mentioned. So you wanted to address homelessness, quote, in a way that's realistic, and know that we aren't going to solve homelessness, but we have to do a better job of managing it. So looking back at your term in office, how close do you believe you got to achieving this?
We're there with this regional homeless authority. And I still stand by that comment. We're not going to solve homelessness. Homelessness has been around a very long time. But the issue and the people who are vulnerable on the streets, that has changed. This isn't just an economic issue. This has become a mental health and an addiction issue. We have people with mental health needs that are not getting the help that they need. And the cities aren't equipped to fund that. We need more help on mental health, and we certainly need more help when it comes to recovery.
When voters go to choose their candidate going forward, what do you hope that they remember about you?
That I love my city, that I'm here to represent our city, fight for our city. We need to address our challenges the way Spokane is going to address our challenges, not the way other cities are addressing them.
Well, thank you so much, Nadine. All right, we're not done spilling the tea just yet. After the break, we'll share extended responses from Spokane City Council President candidates Betsy Wilkerson and Kim Please. Welcome back. In my interviews with the candidates running for Spokane City Council President, we cover a variety of hot-button issues, such as addressing the need for more housing and increasing public safety. Here's a look at a few more questions I asked Kim Please. Our population just continues to balloon here in Spokane and Greater Spokane County. So what steps would you take as council president to address the continually growing population and that housing squeeze we're experiencing in our community?
Well, we do definitely have a housing shortage, and that's concerning. I've talked to people in the Latah Valley area, was up in Eagle Ridge, doorbelling, talking to people, and they have had a disservice. My opponent has been on the city council for 3 years. They've been screaming about how unsafe it is if they had a fire up there. They need a fire station. My focus is going to be on increasing housing because there are areas up there that developers have bought in property.
On your campaign website, you mentioned that you believe City Council hasn't been taking public safety seriously. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's just like the narrative about our police department. And I just see that my opponent and the majority on the City Council are really anti-police. And that is so concerning. My opponent is talking negatively, making fun of the police department, saying we can do a better job. And that.
Do you think you can do a better job?
Oh, absolutely.
How, and that's something that you're campaigning on, of you want to support our officers and ensure they have the training and tools to make the community safe. What specific steps will you take to do that?
Well, give them the tools back that they need. Most of the police vehicles right now are really antiquated. They're, 10 years old, and a lot of them were in the shop. I mean, at the table that I was sitting on, there were 5 officers that didn't even have their own vehicles. They were sharing, they were borrowing vehicles, and we need our vehicles. We're the second largest city in Washington State. It's uncalled for.
A key difference that I've noticed between your campaign and your opponents is you've criticized Betsy Wilkerson on various issues, but she's hardly said anything about you. So how would you say the difference in campaign styles will impact voters?
I haven't been really critical about her until recently, and it's just to highlight the differences between her and I.
An example that comes to mind, I think, in a recent campaign email from you, and I think you had mentioned it, was public records release of an email exchange between Betsy Wilkerson and Lori Kinnear. Betsy had made the comment implying that she could do better than our Spokane Police Department. What do you hope voters take away from you pulling that into the spotlight?
Well, what she truly thinks about our police department.
When voters go to pick their candidate for Spokane City Council, what do you hope stands out to them?
Well, the biggest thing is this is a nonpartisan race. I will work for everyone in this community.
All right, when we come back, Betsy Wilkerson will spill the tea on additional topics that you haven't heard from her yet. It's important to really get to know your candidates before you make your decision in the general election on November 7th. We want to help you with that by asking them to spill the tea on who they are and what plans they have for the Spokane community. Here's a look at a few additional questions I asked Betsy Wilkerson, who is running for Spokane City Council President. The secret's out. Spokane is a beautiful place to live.
It's a beautiful place.
So what steps would you take as council president to really address this growing population we're seeing and the housing squeeze we're feeling here in Spokane?
So we have looked at zoning to increase housing and opportunities. We've looked at funding $1590, to help build those units that we need, affordable housing. We're looking at incentives for developers to do more infill because the infrastructure is already in. So those vacant lots you see, because I believe once neighborhoods are more activated, that really takes down crime.
Let's see, with public safety, I understand on your campaign website, you talk about wanting to strengthen community safety. What exactly does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, it's community safety, but it starts with communication. So many communities don't feel they have the same relationship with public safety as some others do. And I know they have put forth a community policing model, but what does that really look like? And to me, that's engaging with people where they live. So they know a police officer. It's pretty hard to build relationships when someone just comes in and then they go out.
Your opponent has criticized you for comments in an email thread with Council President Lori Kinnear, implying that you could do a better job than the Spokane Police Department. How do you respond to that criticism?
So, and thank you for that, because first of all, taken totally out of context. And when an elected sits and we hear from our citizens, because we're the face of the city, who come with their concerns, meeting after meeting, lack of police response, no police response, and we can't do anything about it. So Councilmember Kinnear and I were both expressing frustration that we can't do anything. And was it a flippant comment? Absolutely. But the pressure of trying to meet everybody's needs as human beings sometimes can really push you a little bit over the edge. And so, but it was never meant to minimize or degrade our officers.
When voters go to the polls and they're deciding between who is their council president, what do you hope from your campaign stands out to them?
I hope what stands out to them is you have a choice. You have a leader who has served Spokane for many, many, many years in many areas of our community. I have experienced leadership, and I listen. I understand how to govern and to lead that city council office. I have the relationships it takes to move us forward and to be ready on day one.
Now you can watch the full interviews with Spokane candidates running for mayor and council president on the KREM 2 YouTube page. You can also text us the word T to 509-448-2000 and we'll send the link straight to your phone. You can also watch The T with Amanda Roley over on KREM 2 Plus. It's free to download on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku.